Hello. Now, as I mentioned earlier, sadly, the mighty Missouri was not made available to EU community contributors, only to American community contributors, which is a bit strange considering they are releasing the ship in EU as well, and EU has the bigger player base, but for some reason we never got to preview the ship or make any reviews or anything out of it. But luckily, I have some awesome viewers like 01010110, I think I got that name correct, and Freelancer, who both donated money so that I could get the doubloons and get the free XP and get this awesome ship and actually make a commentary. They did it today during the stream, so huge thanks to the both of them for enabling me to actually test this ship out and, well, own it. And well, the first thing you of course notice when you look at it is it reminds you a lot of the Iowa. In fact, it's practically a carbon copy, but it's pretty much better in multiple ways. Well, first of all, looking at my concealment circle on the minimap, you should notice that I have a very low concealment. In fact, I'm running 12.2 km concealment because I have the Steven Seagal captain with 15 points, aka the concealment thing. And of course I have the concealment module, which makes me quite stealthy. Of course, if you run a stealth build like I do, I recommend the reduced dispersion module, because generally you want to be able to get a good accurate first volley off when you open fire from stealth. Because, well, the reload isn't that as important when you're opening up from stealth, because, well, they'll be turning away from you, they'll be angling and so forth, and the whole idea with a stealth battleship build is being able to ambush your targets and being able to fire at them from angles they're not expecting. That's the core concept of running stealth builds. That's why I run stealth builds on all my battleships, because angling reduces your potency so much, so getting that full broadside volley is optimal. Now, of course, one of the first things you should notice on the hotbar is the radar. It has 9.45, aka pretty much 9.5 km range on the radar. It lasts 35 seconds, so it's pretty much a Baltimore radar, so the average T9 US radar. So it's very, very strong. Now, because it's 35 seconds, there can be some debate of which is better, the reload or the accuracy module. Oh, hello, Iowa, really? See, this is one of those cases. I wait in stealth until this Iowa sail's past, and then I open fire. He tries to turn an angle, but he does it too late because my stealth ambush caught him off guard, and I deal a massive amount of damage to him. Anyway, returning back, there was some debate, internal debate, and some arguments in chat as well, which they would consider better, using the reload mod or using the dispersion mod, considering the radar lasts 35 seconds. Now, if you know where your target is, having the reduced dispersion module is of course better when you radar, because you're able to fire two volleys regardless. The reload module of course reduces it to about 26-second reload, but on the flip side, it reduces your turret traverse as well. So if you pop radar and so the target isn't where you expected it, but on the right hand side, and you have to turn your turrets towards him, then the reload module will actually hamper your effectiveness, because, well, it takes you longer to turn your turrets towards him, so you won't be able to get those two volleys off. Ultimately, I chose to go with the dispersion module. It synergizes really, really well with the stealth build, and in general, if you know where your target is when you pop in the radar, well, you're going to get two volleys off regardless if you have reload or dispersion module. But with the dispersion module, you'll at least have a much better chance of actually landing your shells, which is of course highly important when you're playing, well, any ship. So I went for the same setup that I used on the Iowa, the dispersion module, but I figured I'd explain some of my justifications for going down this path and choosing this build in particular. Now, seeing as they had none showing up on this side of the map, and in general we're getting a good cap advantage, I was not in any hurry to push. You notice I've been pretty much holding quite safe and holding this position, because first of all, I have AA cover to help me. They have a T9 carrier, of course. Any battleship player should know that running off solo against the carrier is a good way to get yourself focused very quickly. And second of all, this position is really fantastic for shooting over these hills, because of course, like the Iowa, like the North Carolina, has a bit of hang time to their shells, so arcing shells over these islands is pretty optimal. It's also quite hard to torque me in this position. So in every way, I'm very close to be able to support both C and B, as you can see from this position, and at the same time I'm quite hard to get to. So ultimately a very good position in my eyes. Of course, whenever I see a DD, I always try to take a pot shot at him, even in a battleship, something I highly recommend for friendly battleships as well, because it helps your DDs so much, and DDs win games, especially in domination. Now it's starting to look like, well, we lost B, and it looks like they're collapsing a bit at A. So I think it's, and I no longer have these easy targets awaiting me. I have spotter planes spotting me and stuff. So it's time. It's time to start moving up. Actually, there's a Friedrich der Große. I think I'll go pick a fight with him. Now, of course, the Missouri, much like the Iowa, has fantastic speed, 33 knots. I have made some changes though to my build. The one thing that tended to annoy me a bit on the Iowa was, of course, the extremely sluggish rudder shift. I used the reduced fire and flooding duration, but honestly, having run the rudder shift now on the Missouri, I think it might be better on the Iowa as well. So ultimately, I chose the rudder shift module because I like having that 15.5, especially because with the radar, you end up fighting a lot of Royal Navy cruisers. Because if you see a Royal Navy cruiser smoke up, you really want to rush it in the ship. You want to go straight up, get within that 9.5 km range, pop your radar and absolutely wreck them. But of course, when you do this, or when you rush DDs as well, they're going to torp you. They're going to be torping you a ton. So having that increased rudder shift is extremely useful. Damn, I'm just brutalizing this guy. I'm landing 10k, 15k volleys on these battleships. They're absolutely getting wrecked. And you notice, of course, I was undetected because I shot before I came around the island. And I'm only now detected because of the Gneisenau on the right. Now I'm within detection range of this Friedrich der Große as well. But honestly, I don't care too much. I'm just going to keep pushing him. Got some good dispersion on that volley, I think. Yep, that's another 14k volley. And of course, these shells with the plunging fire and everything, they hit extremely hard. No, you have struggled citadeling German battleships, but who cares? You hit them so hard regardless. So, I mean, it's only if you get into a brawling fight where they have the advantage. And, well, I have no plans of getting into a brawling fight because I expect him to die much, much sooner than that. He's still giving me broadside. Debatable, extremely debatable. And another 15k volley. You'd think he'd learned by now. Well, he's just gonna die. I'm not gonna waste any more ammo on him, I think. Wait, really? No one is killing him? Popping my heal, of course. I've taken a lot of light damage. Looks like they're finally finishing him. Well, I'll finish him then. Never mind, my dispersion decided to land short on every single shell, so apparently I didn't finish him. But I'm gonna rush this Fletcher down. Because ultimately, well, if he turns, yeah, he's turning to the right. Well, this is perfect because I want to get towards C. I want to get towards the enemy south at C. And fighting and chasing this Fletcher on the way is a pretty good idea. Of course, I'm constantly changing my course, if you didn't notice. So I wasn't sailing in a straight line the entire time. If you're chasing a DD or you're fighting in the direction where you know a DD is, sailing in a straight line is a good way to eat a lot of torpedoes. One hit, no proper penetration, but in a situation like this where where our carrier is spotting the DD and you're chasing him, it's kind of another just an overpen. It's only really a matter of time before you get that big hit. Sooner or later, RNG is going to favor you and he's going to eat a lot of damage. Now, I could play it safe and slow down to dodge these torpedoes. Oh, maybe I shouldn't. I actually think I overturned a bit. Yeah, I'm gonna eat one. I could have played it safe and slowed down, but I don't want to let this Fletcher get too far away. I want to keep chasing him full speed because I want to get him killed. Fletcher, well, you saw my recent Fletcher comment. You know how much I value Fletcher. So I want to get rid of him ASAP. I'm saving my radar because there's no need for it yet. Our carrier seems to be trying to deal with him. Is he gonna succeed? Nope, not really. Am I finally gonna get a nope, still 2 overpens. But the thing is, of course, an overpen does 1.3k damage, 1.4k, 1,350 to be exact, but constantly shelling those. And there we go. Finally got the good dispersion I was wanting, and that's the kind of thing I was exactly asking for. It's only usually a matter of time. When you constantly shell a DD in a situation like that, it really is just a matter of time before he gets punished and absolutely wrecked by it. So he's been hunting down there's some Essex planes nearby, but I'm not really too worried because first of all, I haven't really eaten much HE spam at all, or well, not really any high caliber HE spam, and that of course means that all of my AA is intact. And the Missouri, much like the Iowa, it has a lot of AA. So this really shouldn't be, if he decides to go for me, well, it's an Essex. The worst thing he can do is get a flooding followed up by a lot of fires. So as long as I deal with the dive bombers, I should be able to deal with his strikes without too many issues. Speak of the devil. His planes coming in, I instantly of course take them as my control targets, so they're focused on my planes. I'm seeing, is he going for me or the Fletcher? It looks like he's going for me, so I start my hard turn. I'm shoot at the York, but I'm turning hard to the left. You always turn into torpedo bombers to make it awkward for the enemy to drop. And my focus fire is quickly melting this entire squad. That's all 6 planes dead before it could drop, because I turned into it. He had to turn or sail around the ship, which made it very awkward for him and gave me time to shred all the planes. He got 1 fire. I'm not going to pop my repair because the A6 of course has another bomber, and I don't feel like getting 3 permanent fires on me or something similar. But of course that is the power of the Iowa, and in this case also the power of the Missouri. Having you trade the spotter plane, or well, the fighter plane, for the radar, and it's honestly a very beneficial trade. It's an extremely beneficial trade in fact, because well, the one fighter plane isn't going to do that much, but the radar can be absolutely game changing. I'll try to upload some games just to show off just how powerful the radar is and how much it can just absolutely change games. Oh, there's the Essex finally popping up. I'm of course focus firing the fighters that are spotting the Fletcher to help him out. He's smart enough to sail near me, so I'm able to deal with a lot of those planes in the area. There we go, 1 Citadel. That gave me my high caliber and my Confederate. Just gonna keep chasing him down. About there maybe? He's turning away though. I'm not entirely confident about that dispersion. Yeah, he's turning away. Turned away enough to dodge most of it. Still got 2 penetrations, which is of course heavy damage. You don't really overpen them when they plunge down like that. You completely dodge the second volley. I kind of want to break 200k damage just to see what kind of monetary rewards this ship will give me for that. Geneise now, well, he's really angled against me. I could switch to him, but yeah, the Essex is not only the bigger threat, but also the bigger reward. Oh, and someone detonated the Geneise now. That's not something you see exactly every day. Probably a torp to the magazine that did it. And finally, we had a Citadel volley, and the game ended. And here you get to see the true hidden perks of the Missouri. 1 million credits for that game. And it's just not 1 million credits, but also 12.5k XP. Now the reason, if we look at the next, the base XP in no way justifies this much, because there was no bonus XP. This was with plus 50% the default daily win bonus. The reason I got so much is because the Missouri, unlike, has 100% XP bonus on the ship. Unlike the Atago, Kutuzov, any other premium that has 50% bonus XP, the Missouri has 100% bonus XP. So not only is this a monstrous moneymaker, it's also a monstrous captain XP. And just a captain XP creator. This was a 13-minute game, and I made this much XP and this much money. In fact, today when I got this ship, I played roughly 4.5 hours with the Missouri since I got it. I focused mostly on playing the Missouri. There were some other games with other ships when my Missouri died, but I made 8.3 million credits in those 4.5 hours. I think the lowest I got from any game was something like 480k credits, and that was a pretty much terrible Missouri game. So this thing absolutely shits out credits like there's no tomorrow. You're going to be swimming in credits in this thing. And considering it's already a strong ship, having this kind of advantage makes it not only the best credit maker in the game, it's also the best captain trainer in the game because of the 100% bonus XP. So if you want to retrain or just level up new US captains, there is simply no ship that is better than this one. Anyway, let's move on to my recommended build. One quick thing before I go to the build. You remember how, well, this is the front of the North Carolina, 282 millimeters. Now let's go to the front of the Missouri, 368 millimeters and 297. You remember how I have had less armor than North Carolina? Well, that's no longer the case on the Missouri. It's significantly tankier when angled forward. Significantly tankier. So that is a clear buff compared to the Iowa, a clear huge buff in fact. Anyway, let's move on to the build. Modules, not much to talk about. Consumables, you should be using premium everything. This thing prints so much money, it's easily worth the money to have premium consumables. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1, AA range or AA guns mod 2, aka the AA range mod. Dispersion, I already explained why I use dispersion, because it synergizes so well with stealth. And I use steering gears instead of a second damage control system, because once again I explained why. You tend to rush a lot of smokes in this thing. And finally concealment to get that fantastic stealth build. Captain perks wise, Steven Seagal, basics of survivability, expert marksman, superintendent, AFT, concealment expert, and once I get the 18-point captain I will be going for vigilance to complete that fantastic build that I wanted. And basically giving me my Montana build on this Missouri. That's what I ultimately want. The AA, of course, fantastic with this build. Great range, great damage, and you can see from the concealment 12.2 ground concealment, and it handles quite well. So a very, very strong ship.